Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. We're just going to wait a little bit longer to see who else comes into the stream. Let's make sure I have this right. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Please advertise this in the Discord. I'm just trying up a new setup right now, actually, but I thought that we would have a lively discussion while we're doing that, just to see how this all turns out, the streaming and such. Yes, I did delete yesterday's video. I usually delete my live streams, by the way, because the only reason for the live stream is for me to just have communication with all of you. I don't do it for views or for money or anything like that. So for me, live stream is just my own personal venting platform. I'm not tired per se. I'm a little bit calmer than I was yesterday. I've actually been working on stuff around the house, so that's why my room's a little bit of a mess. I didn't delete those videos. I put them on private. So let's discuss some things as well. Because I do want to talk about something related to the drama, but at the same time, I'm thinking let's make this a little bit more positive. Of course, it's a negative subject matter, but let's try to kind of, I want to give you all some, I guess, nasiha, I guess you could say. And let's talk through kind of the best way to criticize opponents and the best way to kind of look at these issues around us. Okay, so honestly, I don't want to. I was very energetic yesterday, and kind of like, I did feel a little irritated, and I felt a little bit like, I was kind of just fed up with a lot of this stuff. But now I want to give you kind of more of a comprehensive viewpoint as to why I find all these things to be problematic. At the same time, I want to give you an alternative. So first off, I think that what we should discuss is criticism allowed in our religion? Yes, it is. Is criticism of scholars allowed in our religion? Yes, it is. Is public criticism allowed in our religion? Yes, it is. Is refutation allowed in our religion? Yes, it is. So all of these things are allowed. These are all halal. Okay, but there is a specific way to go about these things that many people within the so-called Muslim critic sphere, arena, refutation culture do not abide by. And this is one of the main reasons that I left that scene, even though I still want to do refutations in the future to a small extent. So not make it an emphasis on my channel. Of course, we all have to do refutations from time to time because, how are you going to defend your honor and your integrity if you don't do that, right? So, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, these things are necessary for us to better ourselves and to better our community. We do require these things. And it is a blessing. It is a reward for any brother or sister to give sincere nasiha, sincere correction, and to, make sure that people are on the right path. Okay. Unfortunately, we live now in a time period where criticism has become a career, and it has become something to base our own righteousness on. It's become a means by which we determine how righteous we are as individuals, rather than bettering our community and bettering others around us. The way that it's conducted does not invoke any sort of sincerity, and it seems to be more about drama and more about building yourself up as an individual than building your brothers and sisters up. And let me give you some examples. One of the ways that you can determine whether somebody is sincere in their criticism is whether or not they have double standards or not. So one of the things that I usually determine whenever I was refuting Islamophobes and ex-Muslims in the past is that I would determine whether or not they were being hypocritical in their behavior and in their sentiments, and whether or not they would apply the same standards they apply to Islam than they would to their own beliefs in themselves. or their criticisms to other Muslims to themselves. And usually, what you would find is that they wouldn't do that. So what they would do is that they would throw out criticism, they would condemn people, but the moment that they were caught out on something that, a double standard, they would make excuses for it, or they would try to evade any possible criticism whatsoever. And one of the things that was very obvious too, especially like people with a masked Arab and apostate prophet, and just every single person that I've criticized in the past, the one thing that I've always noticed is that they never ever admitted to their own mistakes, and they never ever gave you any ground whatsoever. Okay, and this was usually the case. So when I left the refutation culture, when I left the refutation scene, and I started to notice other Muslims the way they were behaving, it was very obvious to me the moment I saw it that they were behaving in the exact same manner as a lot of these ex-Muslims and Islamophobes that you all have seen me refute. Okay, it wasn't that I was trying to project that onto them. They were literally behaving that way, and they still are. They were using the very same tactics. They had the very same behavior, the very same sentiments towards other Muslims, and the way that they perceive themselves. And for me, this is a huge problem. So that's why I wrote that one refutation that I wrote, and because I needed to expose these double standards and this lack of, or actually, should I say, the lack of standards within our own community. Now, I'll give some examples of that feud in a moment here, but this is something that I felt was very dangerous for our ummah to be going through. Is that we have these critics who are not qualified to be critics. So what do I mean by that? In order for you to be critical of something, in order for you to criticize people, you need to have two forms of qualifications. First, you have to be qualified in what you're discussing in terms of education and intellect. And two, you have to be qualified in your ethics, meaning that you cannot be hypocritical in the way that you behave. Because, so for example, if you're going to discuss subjects like Islam or quantum physics or something like this, you should have some sort of credibility to discuss those issues. That's number one. Number two, if you're going to put people on, or if you're going to put standards of criticism on others, like if you're going to expect things out of other people, like they need to apologize, need to repent, they need to do a certain thing a certain way, they need to say something a certain way, they need to only associate with certain types of people, yet you don't do any of those things. And when people correct you for your own corrections, your false corrections, and you refuse to accept them, then you are not qualified to be a critic, because a critic should allow other people to apply their own standards to them. In other words, if you don't meet your own standards of criticism, then you have no right to be a critic. And this is the problem that we have, is that we have an issue of credibility here for a lot of these individuals, not only in terms of their education and their intellect, but also in terms of their ethics. Okay. So for example, let's go for the first one, right? How do you criticize somebody with intellectual credibility, right? So it's not Maghrib for me yet. Thank you though. I appreciate it. So, well, where was I? Is it Maghrib now? I don't think it is. I'm looking outside. It's a little dark because my windows. I haven't gotten a, want to make sure. Mine says 5:31. So no, I have about 40 minutes left. Okay. All right. So where was I? So let's look at how an individual should behave with credibility in terms of in terms of intellect, in terms of education. Now, I want you to listen to this very carefully. Okay, please don't take me out of context. If it does not matter, how much Quran and Sunnah that you understand, if that's a big if. Now I have to emphasize the if there, because I know a lot of people like to remove words like if to make people look like they're committing kufr. So I have to be very careful there. So please, I'm emphasizing the word if here. All right. It does not matter how much Quran and Sunnah you understand if if you don't understand what you're criticizing. And this is in context of criticism. To be a critic, it does not matter how much Quran and Sunnah that you understand if you don't understand what you're criticizing. Okay. So, for example, very common, very like if I walked into a halaqah, my Arabic is not very good. But if I walked into a halaqah and I heard an Arabic halaqah going on, right? And this person is speaking Fusha, this person is speaking formal Arabic, and I sit in this halaqah and I don't know much Arabic, and I start to criticize this person for using words, and I say, "Oh, this person said kufr," because I'm trying to understand what they're saying in their Arabic, but I have very low level Arabic, right? Let's assume that I don't have a right to criticize that person because I can't even comprehend what they're saying. So, for example, let's imagine that you have, let's imagine you're listening to Yasser Qadi. Okay, we're going to bring up Yasser Qadi here, right? And let's imagine he says the word medieval. Okay, and you understand this person's an academic. You understand that this person speaks very good English. Yet, because of your own incompetence and your own inability to understand your own mother tongue, right, your own language, English, you decide that you're going to make this out to be some massive pejorative, right? Despite how every other academic in the world has used the term as not being that thing. That is incompetence. You're not credible enough to make a criticism like that. If you can't even comprehend English terms, then you have no business critiquing somebody who speaks fluent English. I'm sorry, that's just fact, right? So the next one would be in terms of your behavior, right? So if you're a person who cannot even accept criticism for your own lack of intellect, or your own lack of, or if the criticism is that you've given is incorrect, say if somebody corrects you, say, no, that's not what was said. No, you're incorrect in your analysis. If you can't even accept that, if you can't even apologize for misinterpreting people, if you can't even apologize for misrepresenting people, if you can't even repent for those things, if you refuse to come out and say, hey, look, maybe I got this wrong, or even to humble yourself in any respect whatsoever, then you have no right to criticize. Okay, because a critic should allow criticism of their own criticism. Does that make sense? So, for example, if somebody comes after me and says, hey, you said this, and I say, no, this is wrong, and I present evidence, right? And that person refuses to accept that and just leaves a criticism up because they like views, that person is not credible to be a critic, because that proves their insincerity, right? And this is how you can test how somebody is not sincere as a critic, is if they have massive double standards. So, for example, they don't apologize for their own lack of understanding or their own improper critical evaluation, right? Their incorrect critical evaluations. They are upset when people are vulgar with them, but they allow vulgarity against their opponents. They're upset with takfir against themselves, but they're okay when their followers make takfir of others. They criticize others for associating with deviants, even if they don't agree on everything, yet they associate with deviants. And, they make excuses for themselves that, oh, I don't agree with that person on everything, so it's okay. What else? They claim that it's that they should have been approached privately, but they don't do it to others, right? Anytime these people have double standards and they're not consistent, you don't have to sit here and judge their intention. It's not about judging your intention. You can judge by what's apparent. You know the person is insincere by virtue of that behavior, by virtue of that hypocrisy. Once again, I'm not saying they're munafiqeen, but I'm saying that these are signs of nifaq, lying to yourself and lying to others, right? So on both sides of this recent debacle, you have elements of hypocrisy, more so from one side than the other. I think now one side is now finally experiencing what his friends are like, but so-called friends. But yes, this will be uploaded. So, for example, um, you have hypocrisy in the sense that the only time that the other person called out these other individuals for their double standards is when he was getting attacked, not when they were on his podcast, not when they were performing all these bad deeds to others, like Yakin Institute, like myself, for example. The individuals that he's friends with have slandered me to no end, but um, but only when it was happening to himself. Only then did he care about those standards. Right? That's inappropriate. Okay. And on the other side, they were upset. They Whenever they were being called out the same way they were calling out others, they were upset that they were being called out the same way as they've been calling out others for years. They didn't like it very much. They thought it was inappropriate. They started putting up hadith about how you shouldn't get angry. Uh, you know, about how they, things like this, right? Um, you could see the double standards full display, right? And it was actually really ridiculous because the entire thing actually happened. How it happened was actually really ridiculous because to this day, wallahi, to this day, since this drama began 2 days ago, or it was a day and a half ago, not one person who has accused, for example, Muhammad Hijab of doing something inappropriate has provided any shred of dalil from our tradition, not even the sentiments of a scholar. There hasn't been one fatwa that has been shown. There has not been one evidence from the Quran and Sunnah that has been shown. There has been absolutely nothing. Zero. Now, you would think as Muslims who should be concerned with evidence, who should be concerned with the reputations of our brothers and sisters when it comes to right and wrong, that the first thing we should ask for prior to any accusation is whether or not there's dalil. Correct? Do you have dalil that this is incorrect? And yet no one, that is the least thing that people are bringing up right now. Right? Isn't this fascinating? To this day, even now, there are brothers and sisters accusing Muhammad Hijab of having done something inappropriate, yet none of them have provided a shred of evidence. Where is your evidence? If he did something wrong, I would be the first to come out and say this is wrong. Okay? And in fact, I have criticized him in the past. And I have also commended him when he apologized for his behavior. Some of you here, by the way, nope, I'm not trying to call on any names, were upset with me when I criticized him for his behavior. Yet the next day, he came out and apologized for the very same thing I criticized him for. And I left it alone. Right? And I actually commended him on that. But now I see no reason for anyone to be attacking him. Well, that's the thing. Yes, I can attack people. I can also defend them because I don't care about people. I care about justice. All right. It's the same reason that I defended Cosmic Skeptic, because I felt that he was treated improperly. So, that's the thing. Yes, there was an apology that was given, quote unquote, but the reason the apology was given to Hijab, the criticism, the apology that was given to Hijab was more about hurting his feelings than actually accusing him of something of wrongdoing. So in fact, for me, it wasn't a very sincere apology. And of course, the individual in question can complain about that. But if you can spend hours critiquing Omar Soleiman's more explicit apology, which indeed, when he called indeed for repentance for his ignorance, if you can say that's insincere, then take it. But of course, as I said earlier, these individuals are inconsistent in their reasoning, so obviously they're going to make excuses for themselves while at the same time justifying their own hypocritical behavior. But moving on, so where were we exactly? So I believe that hijab in this respect has been more consistent. I believe that that he does not deserve what's happening right now. And I do believe, actually, that he has a right to defend himself. Now, what's also interesting within our community is you see also double standards here as well with the critics. All of these excuses being thrown around right now, you shouldn't cause fitna. This happened to me as well. When I defended my own honor and the honor of my friends and peers at Yakin Institute, the first thing that occurred was that the very same people who had been for years supporting these sort of criticisms, supporting these call outs, supporting this humiliation efforts, right? They were upset at me for responding, for defending the honor of people. You know, if you, and here's the thing, if that's the type of person you are, if you can't handle being responded to, your aggression being responded to, there's a problem. That means that you're not a sincere person, because if you only think that you're allowed to correct people but you cannot be corrected, there's a disease in your heart. Okay, that's very obvious. So, and this is the problem with this criticism culture that we have, right? Is that we want to be put on a pedestal. A lot of Muslims in this ummah, at least online, at least, and especially these particular critics, want to be put on this pedestal as these righteous individuals who are on the haq, who are orthodox, who are beyond reproach. But the moment that they do something wrong, they make excuses for themselves. Their followers protect them unquestionably, without any sort of balance. They make 1,000 excuses, and it essentially is a very cult mentality. And we throw this word cult around, but in fact, it's very cultish. The followers of these critics treat their critics almost with the same reverence as they treat the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the moment you start treating an icon of yours on the same level, or in a way that they're perceived as infallible, there is something wrong with your aqidah. There's something wrong with your heart, right? And this is a huge problem. So let me give you an example of also how these individuals behave. So after having written this document where I'm defending my brothers and sisters' honor from false accusations, for over the past few months, I've been noticing online, especially on social media, that individuals who have been supporting of these people, right? They are attempting to dig up information on me. So they're going to all my old videos. They're looking around for things to find on me. Instead of responding to the criticism, they're trying to find things to destroy my reputation with. And of course, that is something that was expected from individuals who are not sincere. But this also occurred to me in the past by ex-Muslims and Islamophobes, right? So, and I've been noticing some of the things that have been happening. So, for example, on Twitter, there's a particular individual who kind of passively calls me out and is now showcasing that I had made an incorrect interpretation of a hadith, which was the hadith that says that if you call your brother a kafir, then that returned, if you unjustly call somebody a kafir, it returns to you, to that person, right? And it was during some drama a long time ago that takfir was being thrown at a lot of Yaqeen members. So I would come out and use this hadith and declare these individuals as having committed, have been kafir themselves. Now, after I had done this, I was corrected by my peers in private, and I no longer do that. However, I will admit to my mistake openly, because that's fine. I've made a mistake, and may Allah forgive me for my ignorance. However, the individuals in question who are doing this don't really care about me apologizing or even admitting my ignorance. In fact, they think that what I'm doing right now is a weakness, a sign of weakness, because for them, they would never apologize. And they support takfir of everyone else. So, in other words, there's this double standard at play here, that they want to condemn me for my ignorance of this hadith and for defending my brothers and sisters against takfir, but they want to support those who made the takfir to begin with, and they don't want to apologize for it themselves. So which of these is more sincere? Which of these is more exemplary of a individual who is a mu'min? And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I do my best to try to be honest and objective and with integrity. So I apologize for what I did wrong. I will most likely have to make a video in the future apologizing for that as well, because they're going to try to humiliate me without any concern whatsoever, um, for my own well-being, right? Because that's what they do. They care only about their own sentiments, right? So give me a second here. Sorry about that. What else? So that's sort of how they behave, right? They're only looking to humiliate, to destroy the reputations of others. They don't really concern themselves with the ummah. They say they're doing this for correction, to correct people and to better them, to better this ummah, to make sure everyone's on the haqq, as on the manhaj. But in reality, the moment the same criticisms are leveled against them, they will find every excuse in the book to make sure that they are still seen as infallible and without error. And that is the number one red flag you need to find. If you see that, if you see these individuals are not sincere in this respect, if you see these double standards all over the place, you cannot trust that person, because you know for a fact that if a critic cannot be criticized, there is a problem here. Then their criticism is not for the sake of the ummah. It's not for the sake of Allah. It's for the sake of themselves. They are not credible. They've lost credibility. So there's also another way you can find double standards, right? What is another way? There's a lot of individuals online, young boys. I call them young boys because they are young boys, right? Excuse me. My phone keeps going off. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. So there's young boys online, maybe even preteens, we don't know exactly, who hide behind fake profiles and fake names. And they go around harassing people. They go around claiming they're on the haqq. They go around claiming they're mujahids. They're doing jihad for the sake of Allah. They claim that they're trying to correct people. They're trying to better the ummah. But I can't trust people like that. And a lot of them actually come from the West, which is really funny too, by the way. But it's difficult to trust these sort of people. It's difficult to trust. And why is it difficult to trust them? Because how can you claim to have conviction and be upon the haqq when you don't even have enough integrity to show who you are? To tell people who you are. Why are you scared of the consequences of your words? Does that make sense? Like, you think that we're going to kill you because you criticize us? No, they're not concerned about that. They're concerned about like losing their jobs or getting in trouble with their parents or losing their scholarship or, getting some sort of social ridicule. That's their major concern. And the fact that they have that concern showcases that they don't have any real conviction. So what I'm trying to say is that you cannot claim that you're on the haqq, that you are speaking the truth, that you are upon the truth, if you're not even brave enough to express that truth without fear of repercussion. And I'm not talking about like to your life. I'm talking about to other superficial things, right? And a lot of these individuals, I promise you, I've caught them out saying like, oh, yeah, I live in the United States. It's like, okay, so why are you scared to criticize me, for example, or somebody else, right? That makes no sense. What are we going to do? So, and by and large, a lot of these individuals are also fairly useless to the community. They don't do anything other than attack other people. And you notice it's really interesting too, is they focus only on one subject. Notice this, they only focus on really like, what is it? How can you do a proper takfir, for example? So the individual who's critiquing me about my ignorance of the hadith, right? Think about it. Why do these people think like this? Like, how do they come to these conclusions? Why did they take the time to study that hadith to come to, what would make you curious to think about, oh, can I make takfir on this person or not? Unless that was all you're thinking about, is whether or not you can make takfir on people, right? Like it's funny because that ignorance of that hadith that I had about if you make takfir, you become a kafir, right? Actually protected me from going out and just calling people kafir, because I was scared that I would become a kafir if I made the wrong assumption, right? But these people, they're so consumed with removing their brothers and sisters of Islam from the religion that they literally look up these hadith to figure out whether or not they're doing takfir right. It's like they spend more time talking about whether you can make proper takfir than they do about how you pray correctly, you know, how to worship correctly. Do you notice this? It's like all of their knowledge about the religion is primarily about the means and the methods of removing other Muslims from the fold of Islam. Like their deen is based on how many people they can remove out of their sight. It's pretty disturbing if you think about it, right? Um, so when you see this sort of complex, when you see this sort of mentality, you have to question that person's religious devotion in some respects, because why are they so consumed with other people's iman, right? Like that, and not in a good way. I'm not talking about like trying to bring people back to Islam. I'm talking about why are they so consumed about whether somebody else's iman is legitimate. The fact that they're concerned more about whether other people's iman is justified, whether other people's faith is actually true, indicates that there's a problem with them. Because a mu'min, a normal Muslim in general, would not be so concerned about whether or not, oh, is that brother over there a kafir? I want to let me go. Let me make sure if he's a Muslim or not. Are you a Muslim? Let me see. Tell me your akida. And it's the same way with the Khawarij. Now, once again, I bring the example of the Khawarij up because they're the best example. Because a lot of these people exemplify these traits, even if they're not Khawarij. But remember, what did the Khawarij do? What was their main concern? They interrogated the Sahaba. They interrogated other Muslims, right? Trying to figure out if that person was on the haq. That was their primary concern about everything. Well, let me see. Can I kill this guy or not? Let me think about that. Let's give him some questions. And if they answer them correctly, hmm, hmm, you know, imagine thinking that's all you talk about and think about in your whole life. Can I kill this person here? Can I remove this person from the fold of Islam? Right? There's something wrong with your heart. There's a disease in your heart. Right? There's something wrong. So you have to be very conscious of these double standards. And that's why I'm very forceful against these individuals, because I can tell a lot of you, for example, I think you're coming at this the wrong way. Let me explain what I mean. Whenever I'm looking at this drama today, right, I see people getting upset at Mohammed Hijab. They're like, well, why are you so angry at Sajid, for example, right? Well, some of you have only been looking at Sajid at a very superficial level. You're noticing how he's calm when he speaks. You notice when he says Subhanallah and all these other Arabic terms. You notice when he's like trying to be, he's conveying this very calm, stoic sentiment. Okay, and that's what's pulling you in, right? But the reason hijab is upset, and the reason that I'm upset and other people are upset with his behavior, is because we're looking a little deeper than that. We're seeing the contradictions. We're seeing the double standards. We're seeing the call outs. We're seeing oh, it's okay for him to sit with deviants and talk, but he talks bad about everyone else. Okay, we're seeing this stuff. We're examining it from this perspective. We're not examining it based on the way he speaks or anything like that. We're examining it based on his behavior otherwise. And I've critiqued him on numerous occasions too, even on my Facebook. And his only response to me, wallahi, was this: may Allah guide you. May Allah guide you. That's all he said to me. May Allah guide you. And when I responded back and I said, that's not a response. I mean, it is, but it's not, you're not addressing anything that I criticized you for. It was all hand waving. There was no admittance of guilt. There was no admittance of wrongdoing or error, of nothing. And even the people on my Facebook page who would follow him were like shocked. They were like, why aren't you responding to these criticisms sincerely? Correct. So when you see this behavior constantly for years, and you see this person never apologizing for their actions, never being sincere in their approach to people, those calm words and the way that he speaks, that goes out the window. Okay, nobody cares about that anymore. So you have to understand there are two sides here. There are people who are seeing that superficial level, and the other side of people like me and hijab who are seeing like this person's not fair, he's not just, right? So you have to be very cognizant of these things. Okay. Um, so and the fact is they use religious language to mask the double standards, the hypocrisy. Like so saying to like may Allah guide you, um, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, relieve you of your anger. It's bad to be angry. It's bad to do this. It's like these are very passive aggressive means to undermining criticism against yourself. It's not sincere. And people who are more cognizant of these double standards can see that it's not sincere. And that's why you see there are two different sides. One side's like, why are you so angry? And the other side's angry because legitimately they have a reason to be. They're seeing this facade for what it is. So you have to see that. You have to understand where that side is coming from. Okay. Yes, it's meant to be little. It's not like it's like, no, you were incorrect about this. You need to apologize to me. And he's like, Subhanallah, I was just giving nasiha. It's like, no, you weren't. We know what you're doing. Stop it. Stop it. Okay, that's inappropriate. Okay. I think they're Muslims, but I think that they have a lot of issues. I think that there's diseases in their heart. I think they have double standards. They have hypocrisy. There's signs of nifaq. It's very clear that they're not sincere at all. Okay. It's very clear. And you can see it even more out in the open now. You can see it for everyone. It's plain to see. You can see it now between when they start eating each other. You can see it. It's more obvious now than ever. So you see what I'm saying? So we need to be very cognizant that we can't be entrapped by the religious language. We can't be entrapped by the perception of the facade of adab, because this is what they're using. They have a very superficial understanding of adab, right? Adab is not, again, and I'm going to emphasize this is and Syed Naqib al-Atas, he teaches this a lot as well. Adab is not simply about the calmness of your voice, the outward etiquettes, right? It's not just about that. It's not about following the manual of how to speak. Okay. It's also about being just. Yes, it's not just virtue signaling, correct. It's about being just and balanced in your approach to things. And being just also means that you accept the criticism given to you, right? You acknowledge the criticism, you acknowledge the possibility that you are incorrect in your assessment of other people, right? I'm not a doctor, but thank you so much. So, for example, you could see somebody being very vulgar, being very harsh, like hijab is right now. But if he's being just in his approach, then he actually does have adab. Even if he's being angry, even if he's approaching it harshly, he has adab. But somebody who is calm in their approach, but is not being just, that person does not have adab. That is not adab. And we are confusing these things. We assume that the etiquette, the outward etiquette, is the adab, but that's not the adab. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, we're confused about these things. Just because he's appearing to be more religious does not necessitate that he is. We have to look deeper than that. We have to look deeper at the action. Okay, what is the product of the action? The product of the nasiha, of the correction, correct? I did not get my PhD yet. Inshallah, one day. So, and I apologize, I'm not looking into the camera either because two screens here. Let me move this over. Right. So it's not even the harshness. So it's funny because there's this straw man of adab, like, oh, you don't have proper adab. Well, not everyone is saying that you don't have proper adab just because you're being harsh or because you're saying certain things in a vulgar manner. They're saying you don't have adab because you don't have justice. They're saying you don't have adab because you're not being just in the way that you approach these things, that you're judging your brothers and sisters. Everyone's going to make mistakes, and that's not to excuse the mistakes. Okay, that's not to excuse them at all. Everyone should apologize for the mistakes and correct them. But when you are busy trying to find mistakes and you even fabricate mistakes, that is a lack of adab. That is a lack of adab. Okay, that you have no right. That's not right to do. All right. So, for example, yeah, I have 2 master's degrees. So, for example, probably the best exemplar of the Dawah seen today in refutation for me, and I always tell you all this person's name, and that's Abdullah al-Andalusi. I have never seen him refute anyone in any way, shape, or form that lacked integrity or honor, even with non-Muslims. Okay? Right? Abdullah al-Andalusi is the best exemplar. He has his own mistakes, his own flaws, don't get me wrong. But he behaves in such a way that it's exemplary. Like it's something that I believe the Sahaba would have approved of. He tries his best to be grounded, to be balanced, to be just in his approach to everyone. Okay? And he also speaks properly. Right? He's not even vulgar. So he has both. He has the justice and he has the outward appearance. And for me, he's a consistent brother, and that's somebody that we should be following, right? Not these entertainers, not these people who just want to humiliate others, who just want to cause destruction. And it's funny too, speaking of destruction and causing humiliation, notice the double standard here as well. The moment that these same individuals who are busy humiliating other people are humiliated themselves, they call for people to be balanced. They call for calm. They call for people not to smear. They call for people to take things down. Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah. It's an eye for an eye in our faith. If you don't want that to be done to you, don't do it. If you don't want that to be done to you, do not do it to others. Again, if you do not want it to be done to you, do not do it to others. And the fact that these double standards are not being pointed out and shown for what they are is also very disturbing. For example, I will not go out and humiliate people unless they humiliate me if they're trying to do it to me. That's justified. Even though it's not the best response, it's a justified response. But if you begin by humiliating people and you call for calm when they do it to you, that's hypocrisy. Is it not? So these things need to be understood. Right? And many individuals believe that the things that we're pointing out here are insignificant, inconsequential, because the truth is what matters. The truth is what matters, right? That's all that matters is the truth. So we should only care about the truth. We shouldn't care about the way things are going about, the way that we're going about things. But integrity and truth are one and the same. If you lack integrity, then it doesn't matter what you say, because what you're saying is actually, there's falsehood behind it. There's falsehood embedded in it. Right? If you lack adab, i.e., if you lack justice, it doesn't matter what you're calling to. It doesn't matter if you say La ilaha illallah. But if you mean by it injustice, then it lacks an element of truth. It is only superficially true. Because truth is more than simply being verified to a text, being able to be verified by a text. Oh, they say La ilaha illallah. It says that in the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, alhamdulillah. No. Our beliefs, the truth that we believe in, the haqq, is more than that. It's not just truth, it's also reality, ethics, and abstract beliefs are one and the same for us. It is we are not simply Muslims because we say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. We also are Muslims because of how we behave, correct? So you can actually not be upon the haqq because you lack adab. If you lack justice for those around you, especially your brothers and sisters, then you are not upon the haqq. You cannot say that you're upon the haqq. So if somebody accuses you of lacking adab, that is a serious thing. That's something you should be concerned with. You should be fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of that. And the fact that you do not fear Allah, that you mock it when people say you lack adab, or you're upset when people lack adab with you, but you are okay with lacking adab with others, you are not upon the haqq. You have shown hypocrisy. Right? Can I get a takbir in the chat? If you find what I'm saying to be true. Allahu Akbar. So why are we not concerned with these things? Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters, seriously. And I'm not speaking as an imam or as a traditional scholar, but I know this to be true based on what the scholars have taught me. Slandering, destroying the reputations of your brothers and sisters, especially of students of knowledge and scholars, is a great sin. A grave, grave, grave sin. It is a major sin, in fact. And I would say it's up there on the same level as sodomy, as theft. And if you are more concerned with somebody committing sodomy or wearing women's clothes, a man wearing women's clothes, than you are with slandering and destroying the reputations of your brothers and sisters, there's something wrong with your understanding of the deen. Or you have a disease in your heart. Because this is just as bad. The people who slander their brothers and sisters, who destroy the reputations of their brothers and sisters, especially scholars, when they approach Allah on the day of judgment, do you think that they will be below the sodomizer or the fornicator? Or do you think they'll be standing side by side? Because the acts of the LGBT, sodomy, and that sort of fornication is also, in a way, in essence, a lack of adab. It's a lack of justice to what Allah has created. It's a lack of balance. It's a lack of putting things in the right place. I pardon the pun. I didn't mean it. Right? In the same way, slandering people is also a lack of justice. It's a lack of honor and destruction of people's reputations, right? So why do you think that people who slander and who destroy the reputations of their brothers and sisters are somehow more righteous than the LGBT person or the trans hijabi, whatever you want to call that individual? They're not. They're on the same level in terms of the sin, in terms of the destruction that is being done. So if you have more disgust in your heart for that person wearing women's clothes than you do with a brother or sister slandering their brothers and sisters and scholars, you do not understand your deen. There is something wrong. It's not even just slandering. Say that there is something true. Say that there is something true about your brother or sister that is meant to be hidden. And you bring it out to the world to humiliate them, not to correct them, not to better them, not to help them to become better, or even to help this ummah. But you do it solely for the sake that you just want to hurt that person. That is also bad. Right? So I don't want people to think that this is just some minor thing. It's not minor. This is horrible. And if it's done against a scholar, oh, astaghfirullah. The heirs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is said about them that the creation works in their favor. Imagine hurting somebody like that, or a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a friend of Allah. Imagine you don't know the status of this individual in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a sincere scholar, and you decide to destroy their reputation. You decide to destroy their how people perceive them. What do you think is going to happen to that person on the day of judgment? Do you think that Allah will be lenient on that person? Do you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be lenient on that? That's why I don't attack scholars. I am scared of my own ignorance. I'm scared that that will send me to hell. But these people have no shame. Wallahi, they have no shame. Even when I see a scholar say something wrong, I will not come out and say that person's a deviant or that person is this or that. Unless the scholars themselves have unanimously declared this person as a deviant, I will not have any confidence whatsoever in saying anything similar. I will never call Yasser Qadi a deviant. I'll never call Hamza Yusuf a deviant. I lack the knowledge. I lack the experience. And perhaps I even lack the iman compared to them. People who have studied in Mauritania or in the middle of the desert for over a decade with scholars and acquired the ijazah. I have no right to declare them to be non-Muslim. I have no right to come out and say those people aren't Muslim enough. Right? We're not discussing that drama now. I'm just talking about people in general. Okay? Scholars of the past as well. You know, people say, "Oh, that's weak. That's too compassionate." Astaghfirullah. It's not about that. It's just that I fear for my own afterlife. It's not about compassion. It's not about being lenient. I just don't want to make the wrong judgment and then end up being in the hellfire because I spoke badly about one of the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or somebody at least who has less sins than myself, has more knowledge, and that on the day of judgment, when they go before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their mistakes will be overshadowed by all the benefit that they've given to this ummah, and their knowledge will be put on the scale, and the mercy of Allah will shower them, and they will reach a higher point in Jannah than myself. And I'm sitting there and I'm struggling to get across the bridge, and I'm almost falling into the hellfire. And that one thing that I said about that scholar, that one thing that I said wrong about that scholar because of my own ignorance, makes me tip over the edge and fall in. Astaghfirullah, that is something that I am extremely scared of, because I know for a fact that I am not the best Muslim. And I dare to criticize people who are far better than myself, I assume. I can see it. I struggle every day. So what are we doing that we are so invested in this refutation culture that we're willing to risk our own akhirah because we think that we are so arrogant to believe that we are reviving the ummah? And these people, they're not even qualified to do so, both intellectually and both ethically. They're destroying their own akhirah. They're destroying any hope that they have of mercy because they do not give mercy or adab, justice, to their brothers and sisters. How do they expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give it to them? Astaghfirullah. They're going to approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. I did this all for you, for your sake. Yet they don't admit to their own mistakes. How are they going to admit them before Allah? Astaghfirullah. They can't even admit, they can't even show enough humility to their brothers and sisters. So how are they going to show it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So pardon me for my passionate plea, but this needs to end. This needs to stop. We should be investing, if we're going to refute people, if we're going to criticize, we need to invest in those who are sincere and those who are not going to try to drag everyone else down with them. People who are not here for the sake of destruction, but for the sake of building this ummah, for making it better. Not people who hide behind fake profiles and Discord channels, accomplishing nothing in their lives or of any benefit to this ummah or themselves, whose only dream is to be higher than everyone, not in the hereafter, but in this world. Because if they really cared about the hereafter, being superior in the hereafter, they wouldn't even behave this way. Wallahi. If you want good proof, there's a good treatise on the status of scholars and how to criticize them from Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. So I suggest reading that. Yep. We don't know who, and when people make mistakes, they make mistakes. We should acknowledge that, and we should have mercy upon them because we have many more probably. Many of these individuals, I truly believe, and I don't just do this to speculate, many of these fake profiles and bots, etc., who are living in the West, they hide not because they fear any real retribution, but because they hide because they have sins that are probably far more numerous than those they're condemning, and they don't wish for people to know. In order to compensate for their own lack of righteousness, they tried to make everyone look as though they are the greater sinners. That's what I truly believe. Because if you see how the way they behave, the vulgarity, the lack of adab, lack of justice, it's not possible that person's practicing a very, is very close to Allah. Because a person who is very close to Allah does not behave that way. They don't. Have you seen the great scholars behave that way? And these individuals, they mentioned, well, Ibn Taymiyyah wrote many refutations. Yes, he did. But above that, he wrote more positive contributions to humanity. He did not simply write refutations. He did not simply read hadith about how to takfir people correctly or not. He did not simply say everyone else is a deviant. He also wrote treatises about his own mistakes. He also admitted his own mistakes. He also praised others, right? He gave benefit to this ummah, and that is why his legacy will be cemented in our history forever, inshallah, as one of the greatest scholars to walk this earth, to be a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope I don't appear upset. I think I'm being very calm right now, right? I'm speaking passionately, but I haven't shown any anger. In fact, I'm quite calm. So it is now Maghrib, and I will be leaving this stream. But I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He forgives me of my sins and my mistakes. And I pray that He blesses all of you. And I pray that we can move past all of this. And I pray that we can have a more productive and less toxic community, because this is getting old and and we can already see it's destructive. Tell me honestly, ask yourselves honestly something as well. Have you seen any benefit from this whatsoever? Some people say, well, now I know that I'm on the haqq and that person isn't, or I know now that I'm on the right manhaj. Astaghfirullah. That's so ego driven. What about the community? Have you seen any benefit for the community? Have you seen any benefit for the community? I've seen none, only destruction. And if all you can see is fire burning around you, then there's something wrong. Let's start to reject all this. Let's start to hold the critics to account of what they're doing to this ummah and to our scholars and to other brothers and sisters in general, or in specifically speaking. Let's hold them to account. Let's make sure that they don't get away with these double standards and this insincerity. And let us lift people up. Let us put people higher who deserve to be critics, people who will have actual adab, actual justice with this community. Let us not put corrupt judges, corrupt qadis. All right, let us not support those sort of individuals, because they will only cause more corruption through their arrogance and their lack of mercy Okay. Anyways, thank you very much. Jazakallahu khairan. I'm going to pray. And for those of you who need to pray as well, please do so. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mhm.